at least stabilize the rising costs of healthcare?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I first wanted to make a few points regarding the Affordable Care Act. It's important to understand what it will do once it is effective. Okay, so if your family has health coverage through your employer, that brings some peace to your family, correct? There's still a good chance that only one insurance plan is available to you. If your premiums are high, if you can't choose your doctor, the doctor that you want, or if your plan refuses to cover you, cover your pre-existing condition, there's still little hope for improvement. Or even without health coverage, families still struggle for affordable treatment, right? So we are offering an option with the Affordable Health Care Act. Through the Affordable Health Care Act, families or individuals are given that option to choose their own health care provider. They have that option to buy their own health care provider. So, to your question that you were asking me, if this will stabilize the rising health insurance costs, I believe that it will, because before health insurance does not really allow doctors to negotiate fair prices for families. So I believe that if we give the families and individuals, American citizens, that option to purchase their own health insurance, it will give enough room for compromise between the doctor and the families.
Okay. Senator Hutchinson.
Good morning. I'm Senator Hutchinson, and I'm a Republican Democrat. Republican Senator. Sorry.
Your response to her answer to, do you think the Affordable Care Act is the right solution to combat or at least stabilize the rising costs of health care?
No, I am against the Obamacare Act. It imposes a will on the American people in regards to which the healthcare provider they can choose. So basically, it does cover the individual, but they don't have the right to choose which healthcare provider they get to go to. So I'm against it. I think it's limiting the Americans' needs or their wants.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I would.
Ms. Menendez?
Yes, I would. So my rebuttal to her response would be that, like I mentioned in my first response, at the Affordable Health Care Act, not Obamacare, that's the term that's most commonly used, but it is the Affordable Care Act. It would give that option to families. It would give the option of them being able to choose their own health care insurance, their own health care provider. I think we have to look at the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, in that it will insure all those Americans that are uninsured, whether it's families, whether it's children, whether it's parents, grandparents, elderly. It doesn't matter. When your child has a cold, when your wife, when her knee messes up and she can't work, or your dad is sick and he can't go to my time's up. However, it does give families that option to choose their own healthcare provider.
Thank you. The next topic is taxes, and this next question is for you, Ms. Hutchinson. Now, the marginal tax rate on the top income earners since Presidents Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush 2, and Obama has been 70%, 28%, 31%, 39%, 35%, respectively. Now, Carter's, H.W. Bush, and G.W. Bush in his second term, and Obama's first term as presidency are and have been historically remembered as economies in recession. Now, while Reagan's, Clinton, and G.W. Bush's first term are identified or remembered as robust economies. Many have accredited this robust economies to a low marginal tax rate. Do you believe in raising the marginal tax rate on top income earners? If so, why? And if you don't, well, why not?
No, I don't believe in raising taxes on the rich. Why? Obama demands that the richest Americans pay higher taxes to help cut soaring U.S. defects by more than $3 trillion. Because this is not class warfare, it's math. Class warfare isn't leadership. The president insists on future taxes increase to discourage and counterproductive today's economy. The government shouldn't be talking about high taxes. We need to give the small businesses owners the certainty.
Ms. Menendez, would you like to respond to that?
So, in the 1990s, when Clinton was president, he did raise taxes, and the budget was balanced. And I feel that if we do that today, it would have the same effect. And like Senator Hutchinson mentioned, I do also support in funding or endorse giving money to small businesses. But I don't know if that really relates to the topic of increasing the tax rates on the wealthy.
Ms. Menendez, would you like to respond to her rebuttal?
Hutchinson.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hutchinson.
I do believe that by just taxing the rich, it's not going to fix the deficit amongst all America itself, or the U.S. We are in a in a big amount of debt. So the number isn't clear at the moment. So the fact is that if we keep on taxing just the rich itself, we're not going to be able to fix the deficit. Thank you.
Okay, moving along to the next topic. The next question is for Ms. Menendez. The topic is on women's rights. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was passed by Congress and signed by President Obama in January 2009, yet has failed to close the disparities in pay between men and women. Do you feel that it is because men have been in the workforce a lot longer than women and they deserve to be paid at a higher rate?
Is that a statement that I'm supposed to? Okay, because the statement sounds a little bit biased, and I don't necessarily believe that that is true. I feel maybe that this act hasn't been enforced as it should be. However, I don't necessarily agree with that statement that because men have been in the workforce longer, that they should be paid more. But we tried to pass it in 08, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, but it was rejected by Republicans in the Senate, and it wasn't until 2009 where we actually had it passed in the Senate, and then President Obama signed it. But like I said, maybe it's the lack of enforcement of this act and something that we should oversee.
So in your rebuttal, do you think
Yes, I am for equal pay and equal work. Why? Because I believe a person, let it be a man or woman, should be paid for their experience and contribution to their work, because they are made, whether they are male or female. The reason I voted for the Lilly Fair Pay Act, and it did pass in 2009. This act has implemented a lot among the work area. It doesn't include discrimination, whether it's in the ethnicity, the age, disabilities. It has done a lot for the work environment and has improved as a whole. Thank you.
Ms. Menendez, you have a response? The last question is on the topic of education, and it's for Ms. Hutchinson. No Child Left Behind law stipulates that all children should perform at grade level by 2014. Many believe this goal is unrealistic and is doomed to fail. Do you think standardized tests are hurting students intellectually, since teachers are mainly focused on teaching for the test, towards the test, in order to comply with this 2014 target date?
Yes, I have to believe in the standardized test. It's necessary in order to measure a student's progress throughout their academic career. The United States has fallen both in mathematics as well as in science, as we all know very well. And in regards to other countries such as China, 93% of the students have a long scale and high status based on standardized tests. They have done they show a positive academic standard based on the standardized tests.
Ms. Menendez, would you like to respond?
So your last question was if teachers, can you repeat your last question, please?
The question was, do you think standardized tests are hurting students intellectually, since teachers are mainly focused on teaching towards the test in order to comply with the 2014 target date?
So I believe that in some states that is necessarily the case, where teachers are teaching the test to students. And it's not really, students are not really learning. So instead, I did vote for the No Child Left Behind, and I do believe that we should have standardized testing. However, we should also invest in programs that stimulate science and math, among other subjects, so we can compete in the global global economy.
Would you like to respond to that, Ms. Hutchins?
I disagree with Ms. Menendez on that, because the standardized testing is a resource in why our students should move on to the next grade level. They know the amount of material that helps them on to the next level. And now if we focus our students away from that, where are our students going to go? Where our students are going, what are they going to progress on that? Math and science are falling behind because we don't do enough on that, and they should bring more funding for that. Now, if we steer away from there and focus more on other subjects, we're not going to ever pass and oversee that. Thank you.
Now this next segment, ladies and gentlemen, is a segment open to the public. If you have questions to ask the candidates, please stand so I can recognize you. Guests? Bueller?
Other than the press, everyone else can, not the press. That's what I said at the beginning. So that's fine. Raise your-
Okay, this is for Senator Hutchison. How do you believe that the looming fiscal cliff that we are impending in this country going to be solved?
As in the blooming seven. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you on that.
There's a looming physical, the economy is on a physical cliff. How do you propose to bring it back from the edge at this point? There is going to be massive tax
Can you refrain
cut.
from the metaphors and just
Okay,
say
there's
it
going to be
straight?
massive tax increases at the beginning of this year. If nothing is done, how do you propose to alleviate some of the problems that are going to be created by this?
I myself can't do much. I can just take the opinions of what's going on and go to the Ways and Means Committee and associate with them to be able to come up with reforms around that, to be able to modify that and be able to work for the future instead of coming back instead of moving back, making a change on the taxes and also on the economy itself. that answering your question?
Senator Menendez. Are you a big proponent of separation of church and state, and would it be an influence on you in any Supreme Court justices up for nomination?
And are you speaking in certain cases of separation of church and state, or is it just a broad, just a whole?
Just a belief.
So I do believe in the separation of church and state. And your second question was if it would influence,
The influence on voting for justices assigning to the Supreme Court and to the federal bench.
according to the separation of church and state.
Is that an
Yes.
issue? Is it a deal breaker?
Possibly. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
I know you say you're a part of the banking committee and you are a chair in transportation and like community housing. What bills have you proposed? What have you done in that area to better strengthen, whether it be state, community, or any local?
Okay, yes. I do not have the specific names of acts that I have passed or legislation that I have passed in regards to, funding for infrastructure or buildings. However, I have allocated resources in building hospitals, and building schools, and building public buildings for people, and building railroad systems. So it's pretty extensive, but I cannot give you a specific name of the legislation that I have passed. But like I said, I have allocated resources for the building or for infrastructure in New Jersey.
As far as local advancements such as transportation, housing, things like that, what have you contributed?
I would say the biggest thing that I contributed was the trading and the imports and exports. San Francisco itself is one of the biggest, that has contributed a lot to jobs, as well as opening for many jobs. It has brought in about it's opened 4,000 immense of jobs, and also brings in 3.8 billion, I believe, in revenue. I was able to, I'm not only just done that, I also was able to save NASA twice. Education-wise, I've been able to increase a lot of funding on education. On the specifics, I can't say too much on, but there has been a great deal of work within my committee and myself put into my team. Thank you.
Okay,
Question?
go.
This is for Senator Menendez. You co-sponsored the Lilly Therapy Act to give equal pay for women, but what the act actually does is just removes the statute of limitations based on lawsuits that a person can employ against their employer. Whereas before they had 180 days to actually submit a lawsuit. After 180 days, they can no longer sue their employer. How is that helping women become equal in the workforce against men?
Okay, so I believe that with every legislation that is passed, you need some sort of regulation as to when you're going to submit any type of report or whatnot. So I know even things seem unfair, you still need some sort of regulation being placed on legislation. However, like I had mentioned in my second press conference, that not all legislation that is passed is perfect. And we can go back and amend some sort of, some of the features that are on that legislation, to make it better.
Senator Hutchinson, same question. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
The Lady Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was passed mostly to remove the statute of limitations on employees suing their employer. It does not provide a fair playground between men and women. What can you do to make it better?
I believe that the Fair Act itself was implemented for a reason, and that reason is to basically outbalance the playing ground for the fairness for women and men. But as for you stated that it was 180 days
Right.
for any lawsuit to happen, if anything would happen in the work area. I would change that throughout the whole time period that you're working there, so that if something would happen, they would be able to, and if the person doesn't feel comfortable at work, I personally would want to be able to go back and say, you know, this happened and be able to fix it, not just have 180 days. There shouldn't be a time limit on that. If an incident happened, an incident did happen. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question directly for Ms. Hutchinson. Ms. Hutchinson, moments ago, Senator Menendez mentioned that under the Affordable Care Act, people had the right to choose their healthcare provider. What makes you believe that that isn't the case?
As she stated, I was going on the Obamacare. I was confused at it. Does that answer your question? Anything else?
Not really, but.
Oh, thank you.
So Ms. Manis, when the question came up earlier about education and standard, the standard testing, you said in some states. Why only in some and not others?
Because it really depends on how the states want to go about enforcing the No Child Left Behind Act. For example, I know that in Texas, they are really big on standardized testing. And I know that in some other states, I cannot really give you specific as to which states, but in some states they are more focused on actually teaching students the curriculum and not just teaching students a test and how to take a test. And that's what I meant by it.
Yes. I see where she's going at I understand with my opponent, and I agree with her on certain areas. But I believe that on all states, if it's working in China and they're very advanced on mathematics and as well as in science and medical research and biomedical research, they're the leading country as it is. We used to be the leading country. And for our students reflecting on math and science, which we need to progress in the future, if we hold back on that, we're not going to be where we used to be, and that's our goal. We want to be at the head of the game. So I would want for all states to have standardized testing, and that's what I would push for. Yes.
Can I,
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
after that?
You want to respond to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would.
Still the same format, the question
Yeah,
is to
because
130.
yeah, it really goes back to the question that you asked the very last one, whether it was, I'm sorry, but can you repeat the question about the teachers teaching a test? Because that was ultimately the question that you were asking, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I did, because I did vote for the No Child Left Behind Act, and I do believe that standardized testing is, or should be enforced in every state, regardless. Every state has standardized testing. However, I feel that it is important not to teach a test to students because they're not really learning if you're just teaching them how to take a test or how to pass a test. That's not really stimulating learning. And if we compare it to China, they have programs with math and science that stimulate that learning, to stimulate learning math and science. So it's not I'm not saying that, no, I do not believe in standardized testing. I believe in it, but I also believe in implementing programs that stimulate the science and math, and not just teach a test, not just teach students how to take a test.
And we already have programs that teach our students to take a test. It's been noted on there. There is a rule, or there is a bill that passed, or an act that passed, that told students, I don't know the specifics on it, but the students are aware of taking the test. There is even one that says that even for the professors or the teachers to move the test away if the student has anxiety. But that's not the point here. The point is that Senator Menendez is switching back and forth on that, where I'm not going on about that. I'm going on about that we need all states to have standardized testing and for them to progress in that way. I understand for extra mentoring or tutoring for test taking. That's why they read the beginning of the tax test. Thank you.
Okay,
I have a question for.
that's all the questions we'll be taking today. Senators, you have a minute to provide any closing comments. Senator Menendez, you can go first.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank you for coming today to our first debate. This is only a small portion of the issues that we stand for. We will be having following debates where we will get more in depth with other issues. However, I would like to point out that going back to our second press conference, I know that Ms. Hutchinson pointed out that I'm inconsistent with my beliefs. But if we go back to our second press conference, she didn't do so well in providing a stance on any issues, especially on immigration, when she noted that she wasn't really for it, but she wasn't really against it. So that doesn't really show consistency to me, and that's great.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson.
I want
1
to
minute.
thank you all for showing up. I wanted to thank you all for being here throughout every debate. I know I have the first debate, and thank you. And I also want to thank you for being my opponent. I know that morally we all are equal, and we all are not perfect, and we all do come out in inconsistencies. And I will try to be better prepared on immigration if that's what she needs. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes our first debate. Meet us again at 8 o'clock on